Mr. Chair, I motion that we reopen public comment for this item.
We have a motion to reopen public comment for item number 7. Do we have a second? Do we have a second to open up public comment, reopen public comment for item number 7? Well, I think even without a second, we can still do that. Is that right, Kevin?
It's within your discretion as the chair, sure.
Let's reopen it.
As just to be business friendly, and it has been requested that we have some comment coming back from an applicant who is a potential user of this code. I'm going to allow that we open up public comment again for item number 7 right now. So if anybody would like to come forward, we are going to limit you to 3 minutes per comment. So we're going to open that up again.
Christelle Travis. So just a couple of things on the issues that have been discussed. One of the concerns that we have when it comes to the height of a single family definition is that your code is a little bit fuzzy on what it defines as a single family versus a multifamily. We will be building units that are larger than 3plexes, which is what your code defines as a single family residence. So it would be defined as a multifamily residence. One of the things that we'd like to propose when the neighborhood plan comes forward, based on the parking discussion that we ask to have take place, would confuse part of what we're trying to accomplish. We want to define multifamily as anything that is stacked and is like an apartment or a condo and you live above things. And because it's next to a transit development, it may or may not, in the council's discretion, qualify for a lesser parking requirement. We totally agree that a townhome unit needs your current standard. And so we'd ask that you carefully consider any language that would affect what's been proposed at the 45 feet. And then the next issue. Can
I clarify with that?
Yes.
You were suggesting that it be up to 45 feet, but no less than?
Right.
Or you
well, 45 feet would be the maximum building
for
height.
45, okay.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
Right. On the discussion of the density in the church, I understand what she's trying to accomplish, but from a developer's perspective, that whole scenario just disincentivizes me to bring those things to the community, right? So I didn't quite understand how it would help or hurt, but the maximum 10 units to the acre is the cap. So I think that self-regulates as well. You would see my churches and my schools in my neighborhood plan, right? And if it came back, I'd need to make that change, and then there'd be a new discussion on how the density shifts or how it works. So you guys would get to see those again, and we'd have those conversations. And then I think that's all that I've got, because I've only got 38 seconds. It's your turn. Thanks.
Wait, just a minute, Chriselle.
Right.
We also discussed residential single-family max height at 35 feet. Did you have a comment on that one?
Right. So and that's the definition thing that we're proposing in our annexation agreement. Those become fuzzy lines. We would have a single-family product because it's a townhome. It sits side by side, and you live next to each other. We may have a building that is. It's a 3-story townhome, but to get the look and the architecture that we're looking for the Cape Cod, it has a very steep roof. So it could be 35 to 40 feet tall. So if you limited that single family, it would cause a problem in us being able to use this zone.
Thank you.
So.
Mike Hathorne, Michael Baker International, 7090 South Union Park Avenue in Midvale. Excuse me. I wanted to address the open space issue. If you look at the language in the MR zone, it refers directly back to Section 19, 19, the open space in your existing code. We were pushed very, very hard to be comfortable with living within the confines of your existing open space code. The spreadsheet calculators, they regulate the amount and the programming. So there's no need to be putting in any percentage caps as per the MR zone, because the calculator actually does that. We were proposing a cap as well as some other changes, and were pushed the other way, so that, and we did. We went through and said, okay, we can live with this. It's not, we're not fully comfortable with how it operates, but I mean, hopefully you understand that your open space system, it tells you what your open space requirement is relative to the amount and to the programming based on what you are proposing in terms of acreage and density. So there, you know, the idea of a 20% cap is just, it's irrelevant based on what you already have in place as per 1919.
Did you want to clarify?
No, I had talked to Nora, and she said that she thought that they were complying with the 20% as it was. So I don't know what to think.
We are in compliance with that, but the 20% is irrelevant based on what it is that you already have in place. So to double regulate and set a 20% open space regulation for the MR zone is simply redundant in terms of what you already have in section 19.19 and working with your calculator, which is the direction that you already go.
That's some good feedback. We can take that back and
Okay, thank you.
think about that. Thanks. Any other comments from the public? It's good there were 3 of you. 4 of you.
There's 4. We'll see what I forget. Greg Hawes, 4179 Riverboat Road, Salt Lake City, Utah. Just what my comment is about the signage height, the 45 feet. We would just like to reserve the right to argue that at the neighborhood plan level. There may be elements that fit inside the character and theme plan. We may, if we're proposing a lighthouse structure that fits that theme, and we would just like the ability to come and argue the height at that point, not be predetermined that you have these miniature lighthouses when it could be a really great community amenity. Many lighthouses not so fun. Big lighthouse is big. Good.
That's a good point.
The thing is, we're having to make this fit for everybody.
Right. So if anybody came in and it was an administrative decision and they wanted to have a 45-foot whatever, they could do it.
And I
So,
don't think we can do that.
so we see both sides of the argument. Any other public comment? Last chance for item number 7.
Renee Arnell, 2044 Clydesdale Circle in Saratoga Springs. I was just going to point out when it showed it up here on the screen, they were mentioning that before they couldn't put the logo on the water tower, and this one said you could go up to 45 feet with the logo. So, you know, I was just saying if other developments in other zones, maybe you want to keep it kind of even so that they're following the same rules. It said 45 feet with the logo.
Does it say that?
I think it does in here, but
We would want to, I agree, we want to be consistent with that. Okay. Closing public comment on item number 7 again. Any other comments from the planning commission for item number 7? Okay.
So I saw, I think it was under Planner Nora's text, that she had received some recommendations for commercial uses from Commissioner Steele, and I wanted to add we're going to put those in there, then I want to make some suggestions. If we're not going to put them in there, then no problem. But things like flower shops, pet grooming, hair and nail salon, day spa, cafe, bike repair shops. So in addition to the ones that you had suggested that she had put into the staff packet, I would make those kinds of suggestions as well.
It might make it cleaner if we just put uses allowed in neighborhood commercial.
I think, yeah, that'd actually be a lot better. Since you put yours in there, I put mine. Okay, I was just wondering if this is not maybe specific to this code, but I wonder if we are going to need some kind of code somewhere regarding mixed residential commercial buildings. So like if you have a building that has commercial on the first floor and then residential above, that maybe we don't need code, but maybe we should just at least look into whether that requires some kind of special regulation or something. I don't know if there's like maybe the fire codes are all the same everywhere, but it just seems like we regulate some things with commercial, we regulate some things with residential, but what happens if one building has both? And I just wonder if maybe that's something that the staff might want to look into some other time.
I'll add to that because I was on an APA tour in Oakland, and they were so proud of their live-work area, and we were going through, and there was a welder in a live above. I mean, he was doing welding, and that normally would require some extra fire protection.
I would expect that, yeah.
So
what about like ADA, right? Because does the ADA default to the commercial on the first floor because that's where the parking is, or does it? But what if it's 3 stories of residential above it?
It's only the part that's commercial.
Okay. Well, anyway, so I just wonder if that's something that has to be looked at. If we ever.
Well, we have the mixed use zone.
Okay, so
which you can mix residential and commercial.
Right. So what if it's in one building? You know what I'm saying?
In the.
So yeah, the mixed.
In the mixed residential zone to have one building that has.
I'm saying it's not necessarily mixed residential. I'm just saying that maybe as homework. So we have zones where you have commercial buildings and you have residential buildings. But what happens? Is there any difference if there's one building that has both?
You can do that in the mixed use zone.
Right. So
that doesn't say you have to separate them.
Okay.
And then the traditional definition of mixed use is a building that has ground floor retail or commercial, then you live above.
Okay.
I think in Saratoga we kind of use mixed use as, well, I got a commercial building here, I got a residential building here. In the traditional sense, what I've learned over 20 years is that's technically to me not a mixed use there. I see mixed uses in the same building, you're mixing uses.
Okay, but since in Saratoga Springs we do separate them, and we also...
You can, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess historically that's how we've thought about it that way. And because our code is structured so that buildings that are commercial have these rules and restrictions, buildings that are residential have different ones. So how does our code handle buildings that have both?
However the mixed use reads, it'd have to follow the requirements of that zone requirement, because that's the only zone you could do that in, would be that.
Okay, I guess I'll have to look at it and see if it does complete.
And I don't believe we have a mixed, I'm trying to think we have a mixed use zone now or not.
Yeah, but like setbacks, our setbacks and such are different, and sidewalk requirement, everything's different for a commercial building than it is for a residential. So if you have a building that's both, then which code?
It goes by whatever zone you're in.
Okay, so then if it's mixed residential, then what's the code?
Well, the mixed residential, we have the standards we've got listed here in the table for the setbacks.
For all,
it doesn't call out specific to, if you have a neighborhood commercial type use, it doesn't call it specific requirements for that.
Even if the first floor is commercial, it would follow a residential building setbacks.
Yeah, because you gotta look at the scope of the type of commercial it is. It's a neighborhood feel. It's not, you don't want a parking lot probably in front of where you may have a neighborhood commercial use and residential above potentially. I mean, you want that close to that walkable, again, neighborhood feel, where keeping the building close to the walking areas, the right of way, where the pedestrians are. That's what you want if you're gonna have a type of neighborhood commercial use.
Okay. So you're saying our code covers it then?
Yes.
in the paragraph, page, the building height paragraph, it's G, building height 3, it says additional building height should be of 10 feet. There's a typo there. And then right below that, not result in additional square footage. It's also a typo. Also, for a mixed residential, should we require a traffic study?
Gordon?
We have no requirements for traffic study right now as the code is written, and I wonder if we need to.
Well, I think with all of our developments, we require at least a trip generation memo.
That's in there, yeah. That is in there.
Okay, yeah, so it evolves from there, depending on the outcome of the trip generation memo. We should be able to require more if it so indicates.
Okay, so the trip generation memo is first, and then if it indicates we need a real study, then that kicks in. Is that then we require it?
Yeah, so I haven't read this code for that, but it should have a provision that allows the city engineer to require additional study based on that trip generation memo.
Okay, I don't think, yeah, it did say that we want a traffic, what is it? A generation memo.
Trip generation memo.
Generation memo, but I don't remember if it said anything about that could trigger additional requirements like traffic studies, because there was nothing about traffic study in there at all. So I just wonder if we should.
Well, every time we have an applicant that comes in, it has to comply with Gary's list, right?
Or Gordon's, as it were.
Sorry, Gordon, excuse me. But it has to comply with the engineering list.
Yeah.
And every time that's part of the.
But I don't remember your conditions saying a traffic study must be done.
That's in the code. That's in Title 19.
If you go over so many trips or over what is normally found in the neighborhood, I believe there then is a full-blown traffic study that is required.
There's a threshold listed in the code. So what I'm getting at is I don't know if this is subject to those thresholds that are in the code.
That's fine. If that's covered under like a transportation code, then I'm fine. Then it doesn't need to be in the specific.
It's not in a transportation code. It's in Title 19.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Under the correct
The
paragraph.
development. It's in the development code.
Development code. Okay. Then it doesn't. Then it shouldn't have to be under the MR code. What about primary and secondary water requirement? The requirement studies. Is that something that's usually done just as it doesn't have to be in the code to say that a study has to be done whether there's plenty of water, for secondary or primary? 'Cause I'm thinking like if it's a 400-acre development, then how does that kick in?
It's based on their irrigated acreage and the units, the density.
Okay, so that just based on those parameters, that automatically then kicks in a need to look into whether we have enough water. We don't have to specify that should be done.
Every development gets that same scrutiny, no matter what.
Okay. Okay. And then also, I didn't see any specific lighting paragraph. Is that something that needs to be in there, or is that covered elsewhere?
Yeah, that'll be covered at the stage when you come in for the plats, or you'd have some type of neighborhood commercial, a site plan at that time.
Okay.
I think most of the questions that you're asking are do we have to incorporate all the city code into every different zoning? And I don't think we do. I think
some other zoning, it wasn't there, but maybe
if it is, it's kind of redundant. And
Yeah, it says, and there's this clause in there that says except as stated in here, the rest of Title 19 applies.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess I was just thinking if we're adding, if we're permitting commercial, so that means, once again, commercial has its own lighting requirements and all that,
Right.
and residential has its own different ones, and so then which applies, but it sounds like we're just going by the feel of the neighborhood.
That's a good thing to check. Oh, David should look into that, because you're right, there could be a difference. This may not fit in one of those neat categories because it has both, but.
Okay. And then I have actually something that D.R. Horton had brought up regarding that language, the parking modification language. I actually had a question about that. So I was wondering, I think it was the last sentence where it said that reductions in the parking requirements are encouraged. And I was wondering why it's encouraged. Why not just reduce it? I mean, the second part of I like the second part of the. You have that. The second part of the sentence was fine. I just wondered why the first part of the sentence says that such parking reductions are encouraged, and I'm wondering why the city would do that, especially when it comes to like transit areas. Where it says opportunities for reductions in parking, this is the last sentence, I think. Opportunities for reductions in parking requirements are encouraged. Maybe, I was thinking, why not just maybe, opportunities for reductions in parking requirements may be sought when justification for the reductions can be identified. Because that, if justifications can't be identified, then go for it.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
Kevin, this is to you. Isn't it true that when we allow in the code for a reduction in some kind of requirement, that we also spell out the criteria by which we make that decision?
Absolutely.
So if we are going to do that, we'd have to have it so we have all the listings of why we would allow for these reductions so that we treat everyone equally.
Which I think the second part of the sentence does say that. I mean, as long as, when justification for the reduction can be identified. So I thought that's fine. That's.
We have to identify it today.
Yeah.
We have to tell,
Yeah, so,
but if
I
we're
don't
going to...
understand why the request is to put in there to say that reduction requirements are encouraged.
But if we are going to do that, we have to put the criteria, why we would allow it.
Yeah, you need criteria, otherwise you have to grant the reduction
No matter what.
all the time, or every single time.
So maybe we can make
want
a
it to be
suggestion
arbitrary.
or a condition that kind of language or the criteria be built
Yeah.
in before it goes to city
Yeah,
council.
we can develop some criteria for that, sure.
Okay.
I'm a little concerned about
David, did you write that down?
maybe there's.
I have it
other
listed as
places- I think we need more parking.
Well, yeah, that's why I was wondering why the developer was making this request to encourage parking reductions when the second half of the sentence says that it's going to happen anyway if you have justification, so I don't know.
Yeah, I had a question. Where would there be an example when we would want to reduce parking requirements?
Or encourage it, rather.
Yeah,
And
so
I would
I
imagine-
don't know that.
Yeah.
That there'd be people using this transit stop who aren't in that immediate neighborhood potentially as well. I mean,
Right.
depends on what that.
We don't.
So it doesn't make
Double
sense,
side.
it doesn't make sense to allow for a higher density because of a transit and then say we want to reduce parking because of the transit.
Or rather,
My experience
UDOT
is that
says
people
our-
want to park at those places
Yeah,
to
if
use
UDOT
transit.
says this is what the average is, then why are we encouraging to reduce that?
Yeah, I mean, in the middle of nowhere over in American Fork, it's a train stop, but it's a huge parking lot because people are going to use it to commute.
But everything else is fine. I think everything else looks good. I mean, if there's justification, then yeah, let's do it. But why encourage it if UDOT comes in and says, on average, this is what we normally see, and it's like, why are we in the code saying that we're encouraging reduction in parking?
As long as we allow for the justification, because not every situation is homogeneous.
Right, that's why I think it could just
So-
go opportunities for reductions in parking requirements may be sought when justification. You don't have to put the encourage part. You know what I mean?
I think in either case, we have to throw that back to the city and to Kevin to
Yeah.
come up with the criteria.
And that was my second one, is the city attorney okay with this language? That was actually.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've seen
Yeah,
it, so I looked over the code, I didn't look at D.R. Horton's request.
Right. And then. Oh, yeah, so then I agree with the intent of what Commissioner Steele brought up regarding the commercial, but I just don't see any practical way to require it. So I think, I like the way, I think David had put in there about it's encouraged, especially for transit, et cetera. Maybe putting it in the table so that it doesn't not turn off, but so that other developers aren't misconstrued in any way, and then possibly changing it from mixed residential to mixed living or something like that, where it's clear to other developers that commercial is not discouraged or not allowed. So those are my comments regarding Commissioner Steele's suggestions. That's it for me.
Any other comments from the planning commission?
I have one that was brought up.
Okay.
I'm concerned about changing or having different definitions for the housing types in the mixed residential. I really have an issue with that. I think that's going to confuse everybody. You'd have to do a separate definitions for just that zone.
Could you be more specific? Because what I'm hearing you saying is that there are going to be different definitions for housing types?
Yes.
Where?
I
Can you
will.
identify that?
May I call up a witness?
Sure.
Griselle, you brought this up.
We're not changing the definition of your code. We are asking for it in the annexation agreement, so it would only apply to our situation for the annexation and clarify those uses. It wouldn't apply to anybody else, so you're not changing anything broad scope. It's just a concern that we've put forward and hasn't been accepted or not accepted.
Can you define that concern?
The concern is the definition between multifamily and single-family houses and the way that your code talks about them.
And you're requesting what?
Chriselle and I had a discussion earlier about this, and I think that we can continue those discussions to make sure we resolve her concern and Commissioner Steele's concern, because I had that same concern. Got to be careful here, which is why we incorporated many parts of Title 19 into here. We don't want to create a Herculean task for the planners to be able to go down through all this code requirement and be looking at two different definitions depending on the project, and it just makes sense to have standardized definitions and things like that. And so, but I think we can resolve it. I would just ask that we direct staff to do that at this point.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Now, we were supposed to weigh in on specific items. One of them was the parking, right? And then was the other the signage?
I'm just about to go over those.
Okay.
I have 7 identified.
Okay.
So here's the 7
Be quiet.
conditions that I have listed, and you can tell me what you think. We can go down each one, tell me what your thoughts are. The first one was the height limitations for multifamily housing at 45 feet, which is proposed in the code. So it has been, I think you've talked about 45. It's fine for multi family housing. Anybody else have any other thoughts about 45 feet as a max?
Well, that's for all housing.
I know, but I'm just talking about multi-housing.
Multifamily is fine.
Multifamily housing. Anybody have any problem with multifamily housing at 45 feet? Okay, so that is what's proposed in there, but it's also proposed that there is a max of a different amount for single family. And what was brought before us was that maybe there's a product that's a single family house that would still be around 40 feet. So what was the discussion about that? What are your thoughts on that?
I thought that was the one word.
Right, so
Definition of single family. Their situation.
so what's proposed?
That city staff will.
Okay, so we can do that. We can send that back to city staff so they can discuss with the applicant or whoever their requirements for single-family housing height requirements, okay? So that's 2. Uses and suggestions for neighborhood commercial, appending your list. So if somebody's coming up with a motion, well, we can refer to your list of potential uses in the grid.
Yeah, I'm okay with what was suggested about.
Permitted neighborhood
Yeah, just say
commercial.
permitted. That way we don't have to list all the suggestions.
So
there.
permitted.
Yeah.
But put it in the grid.
Yeah.
In grid. Okay, that's 3. 4, ability to reduce parking requirements. We're going to push that back to city staff that they discuss the requirements and the criteria for reductions in parking requirements, right? code to allow commercial within other uses than the transit and stop, not just the transit. So we wanted to allow for the use of commercial within other uses in this zone besides just having, just near the transit. Because right now, that's what it says. It says if you're next to transit or a stop.
Yeah, I thought it encouraged it along those areas, but it doesn't discourage it. It doesn't discourage it anywhere else. And if we're putting it as permitted on the table, then I think it applies to the whole zone.
Okay.
I think that takes care of it.
So permitting commercial use throughout the zone. Next one was the lighthouse height or a monument sign, which is currently proposed at 45 feet. What's the thought there?
I can see why they'd say that with a lighthouse, but we don't want to.
It opens the
It
gates.
opens the door for everything.
And you can't stop it. Once you say it's okay, it's a permitted.
Especially if
height.
it's code, because then it's administrative.
So what's the proposal?
I think we leave it as the code requires of everybody.
Which is?
Is 10 feet for the monument, the sign, the,
That's commercial
40.
sign, not monument.
no, in
Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, you're right. The architectural was
20 feet.
20 feet.
Does that give the applicant a chance to then argue their case in the neighborhood plan? Or it does not?
It does not. And see, I can't, when we have required it of everybody else, I don't see that we can, I don't want to change in midstream because they're going to come back and say, you let them have it, why can't we go ahead and have it?
No, I agree. I agree that it should apply equally to everybody, but there should also be some wiggle room for someone to present their case and say, this is slightly different. It's like legacy or whatever. Are we saying that we will never allow anything like legacy farms again in our?
It becomes an administrative decision, and then you go based on the code.
Based on, but neighborhood plan too, right? Because the neighborhood plan could supersede the code.
But could the neighborhood plan be less restrictive than the code? Or is it more restrictive? That's a question for Kevin.
It really depends on the language of it. So when you're talking about statutory interpretation, you're going to look first at which provision is most specific or more specific. In this case, the neighborhood plan provisions would prevail unless it's silent, and then another provision of the code would apply. Does that make sense?
So the question that he had was, can the neighborhood plan overrule the zone code and be less restrictive?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it is less restrictive in some cases. It allows for more flexibility to allow these mixed units and this mixed product.
What about the lighthouse?
Sure.
Would be,
yeah,
that's
if
exactly
you
what
want
we're
to allow
talking
that
about.
and you want to be able to put in a feature like that and allow a developer to put in a feature like that, you can absolutely do that.
When they come to record the neighborhood plan and they propose a 45-foot lighthouse, if we approve that, or if the city council approves that, who has land use authority, then that would supersede the zone code. So it does allow them to argue that.
So if they're allowed to argue it, then I'm okay with what was proposed.
Okay. Oh, which was 45 feet. But what is over here is 10 feet for the monument and 20 feet for the architectural.
Well, yeah, but I was going to argue that a lighthouse isn't architectural or a sign, it's a lighthouse.
Unless it has a
That's
logo on it.
architectural.
Yeah, right,
You put a sign on it, it goes 10 feet.
right.
But if it's architectural, it allows it to be 20 feet now, and then we have
But
the
if it
ability
has a
for that
coffee shop
site.
in the bottom,
So as a, what did you just say?
if it has a coffee shop at the bottom of the lighthouse, then it becomes a building which can be 45 feet, right? Am I not correct?
That's kind of a cool idea. Coffee shop at the bottom of the,
I don't drink coffee, swig would be better.
serve postum and you might get it. Okay, so, but as far as this zoning code for this use, do we want to go 10 feet monument, 20 feet architectural, and let them fight it out when they want to come in for a neighborhood
Yes.
plan? That's a question.
That's the standard
Look at our heads.
sizes.
I'd rather go with the standard, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sticking with the standard. And it still gives you the ability to fight, and I see that you want to fight.
It's written so that it works
Okay, if you're happy, we're happy.
Argue it with my neighbor.
If you're happy, we're happy. Okay, next one was open space requirements. These are already defined in the code, is what was argued by our co-applicant.
But it's not written that way.
What's your thoughts? See you nodding, no?
I was just looking for verification from David, from Mr. Stroud, that that's the case.
Open space requirements, that we currently have enough code that churns out the open space requirements for each and every zone based upon our calculations.
Yeah, I mean, the spreadsheet's in there for any density up to 18 units an acre in the city, and this is only going 10, maybe 12. And so it should follow along, in my opinion, should follow along with what everyone else would be required to do themselves. Now,
I'll put a cap.
We would look at, a single-family, neighborhood, okay, you need to have X amount of open space, but if you have, attached or your apartments here, you're gonna have to have a little higher requirement.
And if we do become redundant in the code, Kevin, then it's the more restrictive. Right, so if we add a cap, then that's more restrictive, then that's the one that sticks, so. It looks like, sounds like we have a code that covers it.
We can look into it. Like I said, these are things that we just need to be really careful about, so.
So should we kick that one back?
Make sure there's some the open space code actually doesn't leave a gap, so we don't have anything, so we want to make sure that it's regulated.
So we could send that back to city staff to visit that and.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but
Nora would probably be able to answer that, because she's looked at this a lot more than I have.
if we adopt this, the language is, in establishing a strong neighborhood theme and character, a structure with the community logo may be permitted and may exceed the maximum height for signs. The maximum for these structures is 45 feet.
Right, so
We need to.
we're gonna make that as part of a condition, that they go back to staff and that they adopt the 10-foot and the 20-foot, is that what we're talking about?
At least strike the maximum height.
Okay, so anyway, we're gonna send that back, that was one of the conditions.
Okay.
And then the last condition was the definitions for housing types, that there's a separate definition, and that we're instructing staff to visit that and make sure that we don't have conflicting types or housing types. We didn't really go over that argument in this meeting, but we can send that back to staff. So that's 7 conditions. So whoever's making the motion,
Hand us your notes.
I can do this. Well,
can you read that? If you can't, I'll help you. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to, do you have that language, David? I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council on the proposed amendment to the City Code to create the mixed residential zone as outlined in Exhibit A with the finding and conditions in the staff report dated April 5th, 2018, with the additional following conditions. 1, that the multifamily housing have a height limitation of 45 feet.
Just second one.
2, that the staff,
Single family.
for single-family home, that the staff revisit and recommend a max height. 3,
Commercial within the zone.
that the zone allow permitted uses of neighborhood commercial in the matrix.
Reduce parking.
I think we're on 5 now. 5, 4, 4. That staff work to identify the criteria used as justification for the reduction of the parking requirement. 5, that Okay, that the signage requirements are 10 foot for the monument sign and 20 foot for the architectural sign
Architectural.
or feature, architectural
Yes.
feature in this zone. 6, that staff work to verify that the open space requirements are already existing or defined in Title 19. And then 7, that staff work to identify or verify the definitions for housing types are consistent with or, sorry, yes, are consistent with definitions in Title 19.
We have a motion from Commissioner Chapman. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Cunningham. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Just breathe. Okay, let's go to item number 8. This is a continuing item. This is a preliminary plat for Lexington Green located at the northwest corner of Foothill Boulevard and Pony Express Parkway. LeVar Christensen is our applicant, and this is an item which is continued from March 22nd, 2018. Turn the time over to David Stroud for the presentation.
Yeah, this item was at the last planning commission. It was continued to address some issues. I think one of the primary issues was the amenities. We did not have an amenity package there. We had plenty of landscape, but not the amenity package. So just to go back over the overview, these are the things that we presented last time. Currently, a general plan, the property has a designation of medium-density residential and high-density residential. There's the 2009 agreement, which guarantees 6 units per acre and 252 apartment units. So the zones there now are R36 and MF18. The applicant is proposing 100 single-family lots. These lots are 4,000 square feet and larger and 40 foot wide and larger. Access will be provided from 2 points on Fairfield Road and 1 point on Pony Express. The apartments themselves will be a future approval process. That's not contemplated at this time. Again, 100 single-family lots. You see parcel A there in the plat. That will be that's the large open space, or that will be the location of the apartments. The amenities now do meet the code. We do have the amenity table. You do have that in your staff report. The landscaping does exceed the minimum required amount. This would then be the concept plan, which you're familiar with. They tweaked a little bit where the amenities are what are inside the open space areas. So 100 lots, those would be comprised of 80 lots in the 4,000 square feet and above, 8 lots, 6,000 square feet and above, and then 12 at 6,500 square feet and above. The 252 units, so total at build out would then contemplate 352 units in this project. And here's the amenities table provided. So basically what the things in the yellow is where you input numbers that generates how many points you need. Then you go to the table on the amenities provided. They put in the specific amenity, how much of each amenity there is, or linear footage of whatever. It automatically calculates up the points that are provided in that column and that amenity. And you do look at the bottom right there. They do have 201.7 amenity points. And they're required 200. And the landscaping plan, which is where in the open space where the amenities will be located. We do have some the findings here and the conditions. One condition, I guess we could just go through them. There are still some red lines to be addressed, mostly engineering issues at this point. There are some planning ones, but they're minor. And prior to final plat approval, the 2018 code criteria shall be met, except as reconciled in the vested density, with vested density in the 2009 agreement. The preliminary plat is recommended as shown. And then number 4 would be key. Prior to scheduling the preliminary plat approval for the city council, we would ask that all red line corrections be made before that goes on. Again, code requirements and then any other changes as articulated by the planning commission.
Is that are you done with your? Thank you, David. We were waiting anxiously for the concluding statement. Okay. Is the applicant here?
We are here.
Would you please introduce yourselves and your addresses for the record?
Sure. My name is Paxton Guyman. I'm legal counsel for the applicant. My address is 6405 South, 3000 East, number 150 in Salt Lake City, Utah. With me is LeVar Christensen, the owner of Concord Holdings.
Yes, 11693 South, 700 East, Draper, Utah, 84020.
Welcome. Did you want to add anything to the presentation?
Yes, please. Thank you. You'll recall we were here just a few weeks ago, and after going through a fairly lengthy discussion about the 2009 agreement and the vested rights and so forth, it was decided that 2 items were missing from the submission at that time. One was the landscaping plan, and the other was the open space amenities calculations. It turns out that we actually did have the landscaping plan with the submittal, but it was just not identified at the time, so no harm, no foul there. We went back and prepared an open space amenities plan with some proposed amenity uses. We submitted that. In response, we got feedback from the staff that basically said they wanted some corrections in the calculations and the numbers. We had come up with sort of an enhanced playground proposal, which would have given more points, but it didn't quite fit the categories of the current code. So we promptly changed that and resubmitted it. I think you only received that slightly modified version just a couple of days ago. But it is, by all accounts, compliant with the code. I think I mentioned last time there's some argument about whether that code applies, but we don't even need to go there because we have applied. We're meeting the code requirements for the amenity points. And staff has reviewed it, we've reviewed it. I know that there's been some concern that that was not submitted a full 7 days before tonight's hearing. And I'll just say, commissioners, that we acknowledge that we made a slight revision. The submittal was made on time, but then we had to make a revision and ask for your kind consideration of it. There's no question that the ordinances do allow you, and we've acknowledged this with the City Council, they do allow you to table the matter or continue it if you were to choose to do so. We don't dispute that you have that right, but you're not required to. And we would hope that you would recognize that we sort of made not really a concession, but a good faith offer last time around that, you know what, we'll hold off, we'll go ahead and give you the items you wanted to look at and give you the chance to review them, understanding that it would have been better to give you everything all up front with plenty of time. But I do think that the one item you didn't have before, which you do have now, is the open space amenities calculation sheet. It's a one-page sheet. The purpose of the requirement to give you everything a full 7 days before the hearing is to make sure you have ample opportunity to review it and understand it, to have a meaningful discussion at the council. We acknowledge that. My hope is that you feel like you've still been able to review that open space amenities plan so that we can move forward without continued delay. So we're sort of here at your mercy again, doing the best we can to move this project forward. I could give you a lengthy dissertation about the history of this project, and I will spare you all. We're here now hoping to move forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry. Did you want to say something? Okay.
No.
We're going to open this up to the Planning Commission for comment.
Mr. Stroud, there was an item saying that the applicant's calculations did not meet staff's calculation or match up, and I'm assuming this is the referenced enhanced playground. Are you now satisfied that the calculation?
Yeah, I think that was a carryover in the rush to get the staff report done. I think that was a carryover from the previous staff report, which at that time there were calculations were not matching, but they're okay now.
Short of having reviewed this, because unfortunately we didn't get it a couple days ago, we got it this morning. Is there any place where the applicant does not comply with the current code or the applicable code from 2009?
No. We've kind of, and Kevin can explain this, we meshed current code, we meshed 2009 requirements together. And so what they're proposing now, the lots, the layout, the open space, as far as planning is concerned, they meet the planning regulations planning standards?
This phase meets current code. There's some issue with the apartment phase and how we're going to reconcile the vested density in that and the current code. We're just running out of room in that portion of the project. It's 252 apartments on 12 acres. So there's going to have to be some discussion with the council about how to reconcile that. But for this particular project, it meets the code except for some lot frontage and lot width requirements without making, and like I explained to you in the last meeting, the agreement itself trumps the current code when it comes to the lot widths and lot frontages, because you can't fit the number of units in that small space without doing that. And also be careful of the unintended consequences. You could say, well, you have to meet the lot width and lot frontages exactly, then you're going to end up with a bunch of townhomes. And I don't think that's what the city wants here. The only other way to meet the current code would be to force a bunch of townhomes into this area. And this project has come such a long ways. The applicant has worked with us. We've worked with them. This is really making the best of not a great situation. That's why we don't like these development agreements to just be kind of pending forever, because codes change and the circumstances make it really difficult for planning commission and council to make a decision at this point, where we have a code and we have vested rights in a development agreement that's almost 10 years old. How do you reconcile those two? And in this case, we've made the best of a really difficult situation. They've made concessions as far as they didn't want to front homes on Fairfield Road. We felt if they fronted homes on Fairfield Road, they'd be able to reduce the density and have more single-family homes, which is exactly what happened. They got rid of townhomes because they could eliminate an interior street. I mean, it goes on and on and on about how many concessions they made. And I think the two concessions that we're making here with the lot frontages and the lot widths is pretty minor compared to all the ways that they've worked with us, and as well as the open space amenity package. I've looked at it. It looks like it meets our code. They were a little bit, what really kind of the backstory with that is it started out, they wanted to provide a larger park that had a lot more amenities than what would be typical, and they didn't get enough points for that. So our code is a little bit inflexible in that respect. So what they did is they had to split it up into three smaller parks with fewer amenities, and that's just a product of the code not anticipating and not allowing more flexibility, which is an issue that I think we need to fix. We don't want to have, I mean, it's better, I think we'd all agree, a larger park that's more amenitized would be better than three smaller parks with fewer amenities. But unfortunately, the code is what it is, but they do meet the code now. They changed the formula, and everything looks like it works.
The only part I would add to that is just a reminder that we've gone the rounds and do have vested entitlements for 108 lots, and as part of this sort of effort to comply as much as we can and work out an arrangement that you can live with, we have voluntarily reduced that to 100 lots. Now, 8 lots might not sound like a big deal to y'all, but it actually is when you're talking about costs and carry costs and the outcome at the end of the day. So that's something we've done voluntarily, and we hope that you'll see it as that it's something we're willing to do that to make this work.
Okay. Other comments from the Planning Commission?
Yes, my concern is not with. I'm glad you're able to work things out. So I think I'm pretty good with that. But my concern was with was whether adequate notice was given to the public. So I saw the public notice go out saying that the agenda has been amended with changes, but usually the public, when we allow public comment, we usually, we've already done that. That's all been done. However, what they commented on and what we're looking at today are two different things now. Even if there were minor changes, it's not what the public looked at. And so if we were giving, it may not be the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law is to allow public to comment on what is before the city. And if there's been changes, then I just feel like they should be given the adequate amount of time that public normally is supposed to get in order to be able to look at it and then make their comments. So that's the only issue. And I'm not sure, I think when I spoke to planning director earlier about whether the public was given enough notice for the current version, that I think you said that you thought they were. So if that is the issue, then that takes care of my concern. But I'm not really sure if you understood what I was saying about if the public has had adequate time to look at the current version, not the one that we looked at 2 weeks ago. So I guess that was the question. I was wondering if that's your response to it.
Yeah, and in my opinion, and Kevin can chime in too, that you did hold the public hearing. The plan you see now is substantially similar. You have 2 lots and a roundabout that are missing, and of course the details of the open space, but the square footage of the open space has not changed.
I would just add the use and the density is the same as it was last time.
Yeah, well, I mean,
This happens all the time, right? So public hearing happens, you hear the public's comments, and the planning commission has its own concerns, and so plans get refined all the time. In fact, oftentimes plats come back for amendments. So it's not requisite or needed to have another public hearing. If you were changing it to a point where you were doubling the density, for instance, then we look at it and say, yeah, you probably should have another public hearing.
Well,
in this case, it's pretty minor.
Yeah, well, public comments often are about density and also about traffic. So when you change a roundabout, that does affect people. I mean, we have, at least the comments that we've had where, tractors can't go down that road because it's 3 feet smaller, I mean, so it can. And the other thing is, I don't ever remember in the 2 years I've been here where we did send out a public notice twice about amending the agenda. Things change after we receive public comment while the public's here and such, but not like in between. I've never seen that happen in 2 years.
Yeah, so actually there's 2 types of public notice. There's the one where we have to have a public hearing. That's 10 days in the paper. And that's the only requirement, that it be in the paper. Well, on the public notice website as well, but the other type of notice is 24 hours notice. That's the standard regular public notice. That's what's required. So agendas can be amended up to 24 hours before the meeting. That happened in this case. The packets, the information that was available on the website was posted at least 24 hours before the meeting. So the public was notified per Utah law on that.
Okay, if they were notified by Utah, in accordance with Utah law, then I guess that eliminates my concern. Okay, and then, so is the applicant willing to comply with all conditions in the city planning and engineer's report?
Yes.
And I guess I wrote down here, well, the street standards follow 2009 or 2018 code, but I think subsequently, I think the staff packet did say that it was going to follow the 2018 code, right? Okay, all right. Does the city have adequate primary and secondary water for this application?
Yes, but to deliver the water to the site, they're going to need to bring it. It's some distance away.
Okay, and I guess is the applicant...
We understand that.
Okay. And then...
Excuse me. Beyond understanding it, who pays for that?
So there is an issue that we're dealing with UDOT. If you want a little bit of color and context to this transaction, UDOT is acquiring the 14 easternmost acres of this land, and there's a question about whether they will be helping to contribute to that cost and when. And that's, right now, it's subject to negotiations. We're in the middle of that very item with.
And that would have to be resolved before you broke ground anyway, so.
Oh, yeah, we'd have to have that resolved before we break ground.
It's not before us tonight.
these are issues that are handled in our, Title VII. It's a part of the building permit process as far as the fees. Well, when I say that, Title VII is the impact fee law. And when it comes to project improvements, typically developers have to install those. If it so happens that the project improvement could be, their needs for the project could be accomplished by installing a system improvement that the city is planning for and funding and charging people impact fees for, then they would install it, we would reimburse them through impact fees. So in a way, the city would pay for it. They would just front the cost and put it in. So we have to look at that, and that's really something that we handle outside the context of land use development with, issues that the planning commission would run into. That's more of a council-related item. We would basically sign a impact fee reimbursement agreement with the developer. Good question, though.
Yeah, because I think in the planning staff packet, it says that there's no fiscal impact to the city on this, but I mean, it does seem like there would be some for the water.
Well, yeah, I mean, the fiscal impact is charged through impact fees. And that's a separate process from Title 19. But yeah, we always make sure that they're bearing the costs that they're responsible for to handle the needs of their project.
The impact fees process is a zero fiscal impact to the city because it's paid by all that building permit applicants. It's not by the city.
Okay. And then I think that just the staff packet says that. Oh, okay. So landscaping table discrepancy, we took care of that, and then it also says that the fence details are missing. For 1908.
Yeah, that's just one of the items that in some of the minor planning issues, where are you going to put your fencing, what type of fencing are you going to put up? Obviously, we already have fence regulations, you can't throw up chain link, that sort of thing, but so that's just one of the details we need to have, would be a condition of approval.
Okay. Condition of approval? Is that in the condition? What's that? Just meet everything else? Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Commissioner Steele?
I understand. In here. I'm concerned. I would like to.
Yes.
I'm sorry we can't let you pound on your issues, but we would like to know what width of your equipment is.
Okay, I'll use an example. I moved a 15-foot piece of equipment from down by the high school up to my property, up to my home on Tuesday. In that movement, I come along 400 North and up Fairfield Road. In that period of time, I passed 4 vehicles. 2 of them on 400 North, not a conflict. I passed 2 of them on Fairfield Road, and both of us went in the bar pit. And that road is 24 feet of tar today. I have equipment that is 16 feet wide, and time you put single-family dwellings facing Fairfield Road, you know where the cars are going to park. They're going to park on the curb of a 29-foot traveled way. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but it is. Because you've got traffic going both directions.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. This is a comment solicited to determine width of equipment, not to discuss the issue.
Comment on that, Commissioner Steele?
Look, we've discussed the, sorry to interrupt, we've discussed this before. The road's getting wider with this project. If it is an issue with Mr. Evans' property, we can mark the road as no parking. That's within, and the city would do that. The city would look at it, consider what the traffic issues are, and frankly, the driveways are going to be sufficient to park for, you know, what is it? Four vehicles? Well, what about the driveway though? So 4 vehicles for each home.
We did.
Residents are going to be just fine if they don't park on the street. I mean, it just, and if they can't park on the street, maybe they can find some place within the project to park.
We did
But
discuss
the city
this.
can look at that.
We discussed this in the open comment time, and we did discuss that the city had the ability to adjust the parking regulations along the road. So
I'm going to ask one question.
If there is no parking along the side.
I understand that. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I am a farm girl. I have moved equipment on the highway, and it's fine to say that we will say no we could say no parking, and I really think, I don't know that we want to wait till it becomes a problem. I can see someone trying to move a piece of equipment, and there's somebody parked there, and then you're going to have a traffic tie-up. I would like to suggest that, and I don't know if it's in my purview or not, that we send it forth to the council with the recommendation that they consider no parking on the side of the homes, the residences.
I've written that down as a point of discussion for a condition.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not, so that is not a requirement in the code. Now, you could ask, you could basically make a suggestion to the council that they direct staff, direct city administration to deem that road as no parking. So, but the role that the planning commission could have in this is you can make recommendations about the transportation master plan to accommodate agricultural uses. This is a local road. It's identified in the transportation master plan as a local road. They're complying with the transportation master plan. There's nothing that we can do to require widening of the road. You can't impose a no parking requirement, but you could make a suggestion that the council direct staff to mark that road as no parking. Or you can, as a planning commission, recommend to the council to direct you to start looking at the transportation master plan to make some of these roads wider to accommodate the agricultural uses in this area, farm equipment.
Noted.
And I think that's true. This is a kind of an interesting area where we still have a good bit of our agriculture, and I would like to see them be able to continue their operation without being hindered by parking on the street. So that's being said. The other thing is, it's fine that the public got noticed and everything. There were some of us on this commission that we were tied up in city business last night. I went home so tired, I could hardly get into the door and get to the couch. So I haven't had time to really look at it. I don't like to vote on things that I haven't really gone over, and there's a lot to go over, and so I'm uncomfortable doing that. And it's nothing against you, it just came in so late that we haven't, I don't know that any of us have had a chance to give it the attention that it deserves.
I'd like to say something if I might. I'm sorry, just one item. Because respectfully, that's why we extended it for almost 30 days. Everything was done, all these issues were addressed. I'm so grateful for the cooperation. Everything you see is what the city's asked us to do that we've done. It's not our own original idea, it's not our own proposal. We've just been receiving direction and accommodating it. So when we were before you last, the only thing that was missing was you wanted to see the amenity plan. And so we're talking about maybe whether the swing set, is it on the North Park or the South Park? Last time we were told that you wanted to have more time to see the amenity plan. And the only reason why there's the slightest subtle difference is because we tried to do one, we received much appreciated direction back, and we responded to it, and I'm very grateful for the city's confirmation that it meets the code requirements. So that's the only thing that stood between us, was we were supposed to come back with a return for amenities, and we've substantially met that, and we thank you for that.
But you haven't given us time to look at them and study them.
I was going to offer you a suggestion on that.
Okay.
Because I think I've learned from watching you in the past that you have some strong feelings about things, and you want more time to review what's been submitted. Here's an idea for you. Okay? I'm going to step out and share an idea. So if this were an action where the Planning Commission was making a final decision, like a conditional use permit or something, then I would say, you know what, we better give you more time. But this is a matter where you're forwarding on to the City Council, which, by the way, will have more public notice and a chance for citizens to view. So here's an idea to work together.
Okay.
Forward this on to the City Council, and in the meantime, you can review this closely, and you can show up individually before the City Council and share your comments there like any other citizen.
Okay.
It's a very fair compromise. I only suggest that because I did that once when I was on the city, when I was on the Planning Commission in my city. I had to review something, take my time, and then show up before the City Council, and during the public comment period, share my views, and it worked very well. So it's just an idea.
Well, thank you, and you understand my position.
I do.
Well, okay, so again, thank you, but the issue I have with that is, why isn't that true then for every applicant that comes in? You know, we had 2 other applicants, or at least that, you know, and she sailed right through it all. You know, and you guys had 9 years.
I know.
Now, I know there's all kinds of reasons, I understand, and it's not your, and you have tried to, you know, do everything you can, but she had, you know, she had like 6 months, and you guys had 9 years, and she complied with everything. And if she didn't, you're right, we could say, okay, if you're going to give us a change, we actually rarely get changes 3 days before from the applicant. There are times when the staff has things that they're waiting for and stuff, and we get it from the staff, but it's not that often that we get it from the applicant over the years that I've been doing this. And so if that's the case, if we use your argument, then we should say that with the other applicants as well, and say, every time I don't have time to read hers, then I will go to the City Council, and then as a private individual or a citizen, I would do that. But it doesn't really serve the purpose of the Planning Commission. So
Right.
that's my response to your
We're
suggestion.
gonna go back, just, hold on.
One point on that particular issue, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Actually, strangely enough, the development agreement talks about fast-tracking approvals. So just wanted to put that out there. It does require us to fast-track approvals in cases like this. And I agree. I think one thing that you could probably do, and I think it's, as far as the transparency issue, you can email the council as long as you're including the applicant on that, or the applicant is promptly forwarded that email that you sent to the council member. But really, this is narrowed down to this one issue about open space. So I don't know that there's any issues remaining. I understand what you're saying, and you've only had a couple days, and you certainly could look at your bylaws and look at the 7-day requirement. But I really, it's time to move on. This has been a moving target for all of us, including the city. we're getting the Mountain View corridor acquisition, the advanced acquisition right now, which is huge for the city. If you recall with Wildflower, the Mountain View corridor going on to the west of Harvest Hills, UDOT was talking about that being a 20-year project. They're like, we're not going to do that for another 20 years. I've been here with the city. I heard UDOT say that. But we accommodated Wildflower's requests, and look what we're getting. We're getting the Mountain View corridor. Not only are we getting it, but we're getting both frontage roads this summer. It really does help fast track these regional projects with UDOT when they actually acquire the property. At that point, that's when they can go get the funding to actually put the improvements in. So that's kind of why this is a little bit different than your typical project, and you're perfectly justified moving this onto the council and not creating the argument that you're treating this applicant different.
Okay, so just a minute, before anything else is said, we both have, I mean, up here we have the opinion that, yeah, we could have had a little more time to look at it. You've already apologized for it. We're going to move on. So any other items that you have with regard to the property?
I think that I have voiced the concerns I have. I wish that staff had not directed them in the direction they directed them, because I think it's going to become an issue. But it's done, and so the reason I wanted some more time is the last time I saw this, there were red and green lines everywhere. Now I finally have a clean copy that I can look at.
Okay, good. Any other comments about this submission? Planning Commission. Okay, Gordon, you had some kind of proposed condition for this property. Did you want to take the time to look at that?
Just briefly, so the conditions say to abide by the city engineer requirements and so forth, but I just want to add that a traffic impact study has been submitted by the applicant, and that I would suggest that in your motion that the recommendations and any addenda to this traffic impact study be requirements.
Have the results from that study been published?
Yeah, I have them right here.
You have them. What are the suggestions in there, if you wouldn't mind? Because I don't believe they were in the packet. We'd like to hear what those are.
Sure. It is recommended that a separate left and right turn pocket be constructed for the south access egress movements. Now, the reason I mentioned addenda to this traffic impact study is it needs to talk about lengths of what those turn pockets should be. It is recommended that the roundabout be changed and a standard two-way stop intersection be pushed back further into the site. I think they've made an attempt at that. It's also recommended that the left and right turn deceleration lanes be constructed on Pony Express Parkway to accommodate vehicles entering the site. So that's in their study. There probably will be an addendum to this study as well.
So your request was that we adopt...
That the recommendations in their study be requirements and addenda to their study.
Should become requirements. Any other comments from the Planning Commission? There was something about off-street parking. Right, so that's one of them, and then this one. And then water was not an issue, so there's only two proposed conditions. So whoever wants to, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, we are appointed by the mayor with consent of the council, and I think the applicant needs to understand that we take our jobs very seriously because we have ownership in this city because we live here, but we also are accountable in some way or another to the residents of this city. And so, because we take that job very seriously, I think the frustration you're feeling is based on the reality that we have not been able to verify that code has been met, and we're relying on potentially somewhat biased applicant and staff, which are very capable of assuring us that nothing else has changed and that the code is being met. And so, potentially against my better judgment, Mr. Chair, I forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the Lexington Green preliminary plat, subject to the following findings and conditions, with the additional condition, or I suppose suggestion to City Council to direct staff to mark Fairfield Road as no parking.
Can I just add a clarification point in there, since if they come in with their improvements, they're only doing curb gutter sidewalk.
Just a minute, David. Can we do that question after the motion and the second?
Okay. There's a clarification on that section of the motion. Okay.
Comes after the second.
And that the recommendations in the applicant's traffic impact study be a condition which include but are not limited to separate left and right exits for the south egress, including the lengths of those lanes, that the roundabout be changed to a standard two-way intersection, and that there be left and right deceleration lanes on Pony Express in the entrance to that site, as well as any additional traffic impact
Addenda
that the city engineer sees fit.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion from Commissioner Chapman. Do we have a second?
We can't have any discussion until we have a second.
That is correct.
But after discussion, you can certainly vote no.
You can vote no if you do a second?
Yes, you can.
Okay, I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Cunningham. Is there a question on the motion, Planning Director
I
Stroud?
apologize, I just want to clarify. So Fairfield Road, if they put in the improvements, they're not putting in the full, obviously Fairfield Road, they're doing the half width is what we call it. So the no parking, are you suggesting no parking ultimately just on one side of Fairfield or both?
Whatever allows for the agricultural uses in that area to not, to move freely. So I suppose the direction is for council to direct staff to ensure that agricultural equipment can move freely along that Fairfield Road.
Okay.
Do we have another question over here, Commissioner Cunningham?
Yeah, if this goes, this motion fails, does the conditions fail as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, really, all we would be doing is be giving a negative recommendation to City Council.
No, we're just not
conditions,
giving a
right.
positive recommendation.
Right, a non-positive recommendation. But what happens with the conditions?
We would have to create another motion. Right, and then we'd have a second, and then we'd vote on it. We have to do something.
We could continue.
This body does have the ability to make a decision, so. One way or the other, I suggest that move on. Okay, any other questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
For the record, that was Commissioner Chapman and Commissioner Wilkins. Any others?
No, I would be nay.
We haven't done that yet. Any opposed?
Nay.
I have 3, Commissioner Steele, Commissioner Kilgore, and Commissioner Cunningham. Motion is denied. that right? Motion fails.
Made a decision on it, so now you
I will
have to-
entertain another motion.
Might I ask, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cunningham asked about conditions and it seems as if that was a potential sticking point. Might we hear about conditions that would make this an acceptable recommendation to you?
I wanted the conditions to go, but if it failed, I want the conditions to stay, but how do we, that's what my question is, how do we?
To continue it.
I don't
We have a couple
really-
options. We can give a negative recommendation, and we can also continue. Those are two of the options.
Sorry, I don't know if I'm understanding. You want the conditions to stay, but you don't want to move it forward?
No, I want it to move forward with a negative. That's
Okay.
a non-positive, that's, but how do we do that with,
There's no, if it's negative, I don't know.
You have a
about the
negative
conditions.
recommendation, doesn't matter about the conditions. Am I wrong?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could make a suggestion to the council that they impose certain conditions. So you could say, we
Sure. recommend
you deny it, but in case you approve it, here are the conditions that we'd like to see.
You can do
I'm just
anything in a
thinking
motion.
outside the box, so.
That's legal. All right, we did have one other comment. Before we move on, LeVar, you had a question?
Thank you. Just FYI, I hope it's helpful, but everything that you're seeing in the cooperation, we've just been diligently and genuinely and sincerely trying to accommodate the requests that have come forward with the growth of this wonderful, wonderful community that we're so supportive of. And so I remember being at the ribbon cutting with Mayor Love when Pony Expressway was made possible. And the neighbors, we all came together and everybody wanted to make sure that Fairfield Road was dead-ended. That's in our agreement. For 9 years, everyone's enjoyed that. The hardship, we were ready to go in August. We were asked by the city in April, a year ago, to just stub in. Even though Fairfield had been closed by agreement all that time, we were asked by city staff to just stub in. But then it grew, and everything that you see today, and if there is a concern for the farm equipment, I know that we were able to move successfully, on-site, if you will, trailer call, if you will, but it's always been a very successful, very quality office so that you can deal with people, and we made that with the width. But the Foothill Drive has been a good thing, and I think honestly for the good of our community, the region, and the state, I think that Mountain View Corridor, if we had gone sooner, I look back on it, as much as I wish things could have gone sooner, if it turns out, and I believe it does, if it turns out to be a benefit and good fortune for our wonderful community, that now UDOT's able to do what they're doing. It's been a huge hardship, but you know what? Just like these other things, I think it's going to be good for the community. So the things you're seeing today, the parking, whatever, the different things that we'll accommodate, we'll follow the city's instructions and all these things. They're just the natural result of the accommodations that we've been making progressively to try to contribute to the community. I thank you for all of your passion and all the things you're doing, and I share it. I share it. We love this community and we want to contribute.
Mr. Christensen, I just wanted to say something to you. What I'm hearing from this body, and I listen to these guys, I listen intently to everything that everybody says in this meeting. What they're really trying to say to you, they're not against your property. They're not against anything that you're doing or submitting. What they want is time to be able to review it to make sure that it's according to, that it's according to the code. They want to be able to do their job in a way that they feel comfortable making a recommendation to the city council. So if we had had a little more time to be able to review it and to be able to soak it in and look at the code, because it's difficult. There's a lot of code, and we're all professionals. I think we all have other responsibilities that take us away. So I think that's the message that people are trying to send here, even though that I voted for the positive recommendation. I think what they're trying to say is get the thing in on time. That's
The only thing I was going to say on that, if I might, Mr. Chair, is that as we did that last time thoroughly and addressed everything, and we narrowed it down to the open space and the amenities. And the open space actually was there, but the amenities just comes down to what type of slide you have, what type of swing you have, where you locate it. That's where we are.
Seems inconsequential, but for them, they want to see it.
Would we be able to get a positive recommendation if we continue this to the next meeting?
If I'll speak for me.
Unless you make changes again at the last minute.
No, with no more changes. Exactly the way you've got it right now. Because we really want a positive recommendation.
If we find that staff has, like they have, and that we feel that the code has been met, I would commit that I would forward a positive recommendation. I just want time.
Commissioner Cunningham and Kilgore?
Mr. Chair.
Yes. That would be a yay for me as well.
Exactly, and you know, like what the city attorney was saying, I don't think expediting, we should expedite. If that's what the agreement says, we should expedite. However, I don't think we're supposed to expedite without reading it. So we're not like, you know, congressmen on Capitol Hill where they passed this budget amendment without even having read it. Well, I'm not personally that way.
Thank goodness you're not.
But I do want to expedite, you know, but I have to read it.
If it wasn't for the delay in the production in April, seasonality, it's the only thing we've been.
Yes.
It's worth the wait to get a positive recommendation. We'll stipulate to continue it for that very reason.
I would like to make a motion.
Hold on a second, just a second. Right here, and then we're going to go
Yeah,
here.
if I could just say my 2 cents. So if we look at the overall project, density is not an issue. The lot size, the lot width, that's not an issue. Street widths are current street widths. Okay, there are some engineering issues, underground things, which, you know, honestly, I've never seen a planning commission get worked up about, you know, underground engineering things. And so basically it goes back to the amenities. They have the open space, they have the more than the square footage they need for landscaping. The issue was what is the amenity package? I don't think we can be picky and say we don't like that amenity you've chosen. We don't have that right. If they meet the points, they meet the points. And so I think by looking at that and saying, based on their spreadsheet, we've looked at it, and their initial spreadsheet had some wrong numbers. We had them correct some numbers on their spreadsheet. And so where they resubmitted, they meet the points. I think that's probably the biggest issue of it, not, well, I don't like a bench there, I don't like a pavilion there. I don't think we have that kind of say to say we don't like the amenities you're choosing. The code allows them to pick, and we assess the points to it, and if they meet the points, then they're good.
But are you then suggesting a standard operating procedure where other applicants come with late packets, and then you say, oh, by the way, it's just a few things here?
No, I would
say, okay.
Yeah, I would never make this a standard.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
the
Chapman,
applicant
just a minute.
has stipulated to continue it.
I've heard that, but I want to hear
So,
from Commissioner Chapman, and then we'll make a decision.
Unfortunately, I was unable to attend a couple weeks ago when this, you know, came up. What I'm hearing is that the only thing that changed was that the amenities were defined, not that the space changed, not that anything. And so really, to me, it becomes a micro.
That was removed. Hold on. It was changed. There were considerable.
So a point of information then, Mr. Stroud, what changed from last time this came before the body? Amenities?
The amenities?
Roundabout?
The roundabout was pointed out last time that was to be removed.
Yeah, that was changed before.
And so that was a condition of, or that was an observation from last time?
It was, yeah,
So that was complying with an observation?
Yeah, the roundabout didn't work, I think, for fire.
And so, I mean, I share the same heartburn about not reading this, but to me, if those are the things that have changed, and realizing that just in the whole Fat Cats thing, we just forwarded a recommendation to council, and council approved the ability for staff to approve permitted uses without review from this commission. And so if it's about the amenities, I don't want to micromanage that process. I'm okay either way. I motioned a positive recommendation. I don't see why we don't need to forward a positive recommendation. If the applicant says they want to continue it, then I'd rather just continue it and go home.
Hold on.
I don't want to go.
Before we do that, I want to ask this question. Is there anything that you don't know, and I'm talking to all of us as a planning commission, is there anything we don't know right now that we're going to learn in 2 weeks when we come back for this?
Well, I will get to look at plans without red and green markings all over them. I'll actually be able to read them, and I couldn't before because there were so many red and green lines on them.
Well, that was the time before. Is that what's in the packet tonight?
No, and that means I can look at them and actually read them.
So before you were looking at the red and green and then you saw the changes.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, it's not just the amenities to me, I want to look at the whole package, because this will be a recorded plat after the preliminary plat, then it will go for final plat, and sometimes those go with no more.
All right, I think we've said enough. I'll entertain another motion.
Oh, I had it. I move that we continue this item for Lexington Green, item 8, to the next meeting. And could I also suggest that since they have sat here tonight for a long time, that we put them first on the agenda? Is that a possibility?
Wait a minute. Is that the end of your motion?
Yes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any question on the motion? You have a question on your own motion, you can ask it.
Oh, okay. I'd just like to, as a condition of that continuance, that they be allowed to be first on the agenda.
You might also consider capturing the conditions of the failed motion just to note them so we don't forget.
Well, it depends on what the packet looks like.
Hold on, what he's saying is, in the failed motion that we had conditions. And we're not passing anything on to, if her motion passes, we're not passing anything on to the
No, I'm not saying make them a
council.
condition to her motion. I'm just saying, have staff capture those.
Yeah, we'll remind you
To
the next meeting.
Actually, you could ask them, the staff, to go over those conditions anyway and have them prepared for our next meeting if this motion
I think
passes.
that's what you were getting to. wasn't it?
motion.
Is that part of your motion?
Did we have a second?
We did.
Seconded.
Commissioner
Okay,
Kilgore?
I will accept.
Commissioner Kilgore, you accept that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So 2 nays were Commissioner Wilkins and Commissioner Chapman. All others were aye.
The date of the next meeting is
April 26.
April 26th.
I actually will not be there, so I'll have to have somebody fill in for me. No, we'll have to get together and try and get, because they want their packet then a week in advance. So basically, it's a week from today, where we can talk outside.
Thank you.
Before you leave, I just wanted to say the reason for the public record why I voted nay was because I believe we could make a decision tonight to move this on to the city council. All right, thank you.
Thanks
for your time. Item number 9, approval of minutes. We're almost done. Everybody had a chance to take a look at those? If so, I will entertain a motion.
I've closed up my packet. Was it March the 29th? Or?
March 22nd.
I move that we accept the minutes of March 22nd as written.
We have a motion?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Kilgore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Chair, I
Reports of action.
sustained or absentee.
For the record, Commissioner Chapman abstained because he was not here on that date. Reports of action.
We do have one here that will be for the University of Utah. Let me get the right keyboard here. This is my first one of these, so if you guys want to assist me, that'd be great.
Take off your caps lock. That's my
Everybody watches
assistance.
you
I'm
type.
done.
That's when you make all the mistakes and people watch you.
Right.
Okay, so we have April 12th, Title 19 mixed residential zone, ordinance up on the top. Go back to my notes here. Didn't see any conditions other than what was in the staff report. There was no public comment. Presentation. Applicant. Get the right mouse. All right. Commissioner Kilgore, meet all conditions of staff report.
While he's doing that, may I ask the city attorney a question? Kevin, I don't know, but what we need to have some corrections put into our code, because it says the city council may amend, change, or modify any provisions of the general plan land use ordinances or zoning map, provided the proposed amendment, change, or modification has first been reviewed by the Planning Commission, has been done, or submitted to it for its recommendation in accordance with section whatever. We've done that. Before taking action, the City Council has first held a public hearing on the proposed amendment. And I know now that the code, or the code section that we have proposed, has not been advertised for a public hearing with the council. And I know you have for next Tuesday, but it's on the agenda. And I'm just wondering if we need to change this in our code.
Yes, we should. It's, that's probably an administrative approval because, as you remember, we changed the chart that talked about the public hearings required, and the Planning Commission made the positive recommendation to remove the public hearing requirement with the council. So at this point, recall if on each ordinance that you adopt, you may not have noticed it, but there's a section that says basically you're amending any conflicting ordinances. So that's just an administrative change that staff can do by removing that.
Thank you.
We'd probably change it to say the land use authority rather than the council, or maybe, no, we'd say the Planning Commission makes the recommendation.
And has the public hearing.
Yeah, sorry, the public hearing. But yeah, there's always going to be things in the code that's why we have that clause in the adoption, the ordinance that adopts the code change.
This is the wrong one. I would look at the wrong one there. I was doing the wrong one on here. Kevin, what is the process for this? Do they have to sign anything? Guess you have to sign?
Make a motion, adopt it, and then the chair would sign it.
I've got all the notes here. I mean, do they have to sit and wait till I put all these notes on here?
Can you just copy the notes and paste them onto here? Because we're going to make a motion to approve them.
Programs here.
Just copy it from one and paste it in the other.
I'm not even sure this one's necessary, David. So just so the Planning Commission understands, I was going to point this out during this discussion item. We're not allowed to impose any requirements on the University of Utah. They're a state entity. So what happened, the process that you go through is they apply, they get feedback from staff, they have to go through our process. But at the end of the day, they can say, we don't want to comply with any of your conditions, and they can put up whatever they want. The state is sovereign, and so they're exempt from land use ordinances. They have to go through the process and get feedback and consider that. But at the end of the day, they don't have to comply. So a report of action isn't quite as needed for this type of situation. Because I hate to say it, no matter what we do or say, they can still say no.
It's like a school.
But it's great. Well, schools are different. They do have to comply with their ordinances. There's a few exceptions. They don't have to worry about aesthetics. So, that's why you have ugly schools popping up everywhere. They don't have to, they don't have to worry about our fencing requirements. That's why you see chain link. And they don't have to comply with landscape and open space requirements. But the state is completely different. They don't have to comply with any of our requirements. So I don't know that a report of action is really all that needed. David.
We have to do it for the mixed residential.
That's up to the council.
We have to do it for the mixed residential, though.
Oh, okay.
That's going next week, too.
Yeah, no, that's going to be critical because the council really needs to hear your feedback about that code change. That's one of your primary roles, is make recommendations on those decisions.
Surface wood.
It's up to you. Might be able to just knock that one out and not worry about the U of U and just do the mixed residential.
This is the mixed residential agenda, Tuesday.
We've never done this.
Sorry, let me make that public. If we do have something that's going to the city council, you do a board of action. Do it.
Okay.
This one's important
You've
because
been
we
out
had
there.
a lot of
The sun-
recommendations.
the sun
In
got
fact,
to you.
No, it was because Kimber was always doing this while David was talking, or.
Yeah.
we need the 7 conditions on there.
Mm-hmm.
This one.
In the notes of what we
I know
said.
how to get rid of this bottom bar so I can actually
Yeah, right-click it.
scroll or do my
You
scroll.
go to taskbar settings at the very bottom.
And
And then automatically hide the taskbar in desktop mode. Boom.
Tell me why, when I press on my mouse, that it just flies down.
Because you need operator error or you need a new mouse.
Okay, I need a new mouse
It's,
then.
it's the tactile response in the fingers.
I try to stop it, and it just goes flying down.
While you're working on that, David, we're just gonna simultaneously look at item number 11. Do we have any commission comments?
Well, I do, I guess. After what happened last night or yesterday in West Valley, my comments about the Smiths hiding and having complete coverage of their windows and doors makes sense now.
She's talking about the shooting. Shooting at the Smith.
It was right in the way I
I
understand.
thought about that I thought about your comments when I heard about that. That's tragic.
That makes a big difference.
Any other comments?
I think the
Oh, you didn't? There was a shooting right in.
It's on the wrong one.
How are we looking?
Mr. Chair, I think it's only right that we have some,
All right, can you zoom in a little bit there and maybe go over it with this? Sandra. You're not on. Ken, you have 2 bullets. 2 bullets.
I don't,
Percentage?
no?
No.
I don't. I know one thing we discussed, and it didn't get in the motion, but to look at changing the name of to mixed living.
Well, that. Do you have the 7 conditions on there? Can you go to that? Okay. All right.
Okay. I don't want to be nitpicky, but.
The word signage is misspelled.
Yes, that, and, okay, signage height is, and we don't want, the thing I think we all are talking about is we want all verbiage and logos and everything on the 10 feet of signage, and then they can go to 20 feet on whatever, on a 20-foot lighthouse. And I can see that.
Architectural. That's right.
Yeah.
No, 20 feet. They'd have to fight it in the variance. Okay, so has everybody had a chance to take a look at this? Because we want to get this moving. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve. I think I saw them.
Can you back that up?
Everybody else see them?
Just a minute. Yes, did you get in there about the, okay, I see it now. Okay.
Okay, go back to the 7 real quick. Yep. Where's the single family? Yep. Permit. Staff to recommend. We're asking them to
It should be a single-family home, because I don't think you're going to take a single family. They can only be so.
Right, thank you.
358 combined inches.
Okay, staff to identify criteria to justify reduction parking permit, yes, permit. Signage, 10, staff, special requirements, satellite team staff. Okay, I think those are all there. No, to make sure that there aren't separate definitions within the annexation agreement and the current code. As part of your.
Yeah. Only with your single family.
Yeah, they were, and I think they were wrong in what they were saying, but I didn't.
Staff to assure, to assure the same definitions
Believe me.
before 2, I mean after 2 and before same, to assure that there are the same definitions.
Likely 2 weeks?
Oh, yeah.
to assure that
I wish
You anchored the ship.
there are the same definitions in an annexation agreement
Here.
as in Title 19. That's good.
Do you have a problem?
Okay, everybody, I'll entertain a motion to approve these reports of action from today.
Move that we approve the report of action
For
for
12.
for April 12th, as written by the plant director.
Motion by Ken Kilgore, second.
A second.
We have a second from Commissioner Steele. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Director's report? Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that after, but reports of action? I'm sorry, director's report?
Well, I know one of them is very well versed in, will he be allowed to do some of this code enforcement that's slipping through the cracks? I know you need him really bad.
In fairness,
Smiths. Okay. What about Smiths? That, after yesterday in West Valley, that needs to go high priority.
All right, without objection, we adjourn.
Smithson.